Hello and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be going over Grumpy Bookstore Owner. And this one you have a bookstore owner that has a store open for n minutes, and every minute some number of customers enter the store, and this is how many enter at every minute. So 1 enters at minute 0, 0 enters at minute 1, and so on. And then at the end of the minute, the customers leave. And so at some minutes the bookstore owner is grumpy, and you're given an array grumpy where grumpy I is 1 if the bookstore owner is grumpy and 0 otherwise. And when they're grumpy, the customers of that minute are not satisfied, otherwise they are satisfied. So there's also this other thing you can do to keep the people not grumpy for consecutive minutes, and you can only use it once. So return the maximum number of customers that can be satisfied through the day. So basically the whole minutes thing doesn't really matter. It's essentially some number of customers enter and leave, and they all enter and leave at one time, and then the next group and next group and again next group and next group. So you could think of each one of these numbers as a different group of customers, and then the group enters and leaves before the next one enters and leaves. So basically, and then yeah, you can do this like thing where you can basically pick any 3. So if the minutes is 3, that means you can pick any consecutive sequence of 3 customers, and then regardless of if the bookstore owner is grumpy or not, it doesn't really matter because they'll be satisfied regardless. So in this case, you're going to want to pick the last 3. So for these 3, it doesn't matter if the owner is grumpy or not. These numbers will always count. And then for these, it depends on the owner. So let's take a look at this example in more detail and kind of work it out. So let's say, first of all, we don't have any kind of like secret thing or whatever. And how do we just calculate how many customers do we count? How many customers are happy? So customers are happy if they're here and the person isn't grumpy. So like here, there's 1 customer. Here there's 1 customer. Here there's 1 customer. 7 and 6. And anytime the owner is grumpy, those customers are not happy, right? So that's what they tell you here. So in this case, if you didn't have any special techniques or anything, you would get 16 total customers that are happy. And so this is what happens if there is no technique. But let's say you have a technique where you can do this thing where for 3 minutes or for m minutes, they will not be grumpy. So essentially, you can pick some interval in here that's some minutes long. So let's say we have a 3-minute technique here, and we can pick any 3 consecutive minutes, and for those 3 minutes the person won't be grumpy. So what happens when that person isn't grumpy, like let's say we pick this section. So previously we didn't count these people because the person was grumpy, but now they're not. So if you pick this section, then we'll have 14 more people who are happy. So you'll get 30 total. And so the problem is basically figure out like what section you want to use to get the best result possible. And so the section we pick, once again to repeat, if this is our original total without this technique, and with the technique, if there was a 1 here, now you actually need to add this value. And if there was a 0, you already had this value before, right? So like these are the values we included originally to get 16, but if we pick this section, we also include everything that has a 1 now. So how do we do this efficiently? And this is a pretty easy one. So what we can do is, first of all, we can start getting a total, just a total overall, right? So get the total customers' happiness, and all we have to do there is just go through the array and just check if grumpy is 0. If grumpy is 0, add to the total. So we'll add like this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. Then all we need to do is just make a sliding window of length m, and the window is always going to be of length m, so it's always going to be 3. And then, so let's say our window is 3 here. Then we could just say like, okay, for this window, like if this happens, then we're going to take in some people, and then what if we move the window here? What if we move the window here? What if we move the window here? And so on and so on and so on. And you're always going to want to use the full window, because even if, like, let's say the person wasn't grumpy at all, if you use the whole window, you're still going to get the same result. You're still going to get an optimal result. You're still going to get like tied for the best and so on. So basically, let's say our window here is 3 minutes of this technique thing that the guy has. So how does this look now? So first we start with a total without using the window at all. Then we start over here, and we're basically just going to keep adding to our window until our window is too long. So we'll have 2 pointers, I guess. You don't need 2 pointers. So I guess, yeah, so I'll kind of show you how you do this without 2 pointers with just 1. So our window is length 3. So we can keep adding people until our window is too long, and we're starting at 0, remember. So once our window gets to here, then our window is going to be too long because it's going to be 4. But until then, we can just keep adding people and then maximize our result. So like here, we're going to add this time to our window of using this technique. And so we'll check, were they grumpy? No, they weren't. So this isn't going to add anything because we already have this value. Then we're going to go over here and we're going to say, were they grumpy? Yes, they were, but there are no customer. Oh, I guess let's just add a customer here. So there we go. So let's say, or let's add like 5 or something. There we go. Okay, so at this time, they were grumpy, so we didn't include this value in our original 16. But now, if this is part of our window that the person is not grumpy, then we're going to add this to our number. So our number now will be 21. And this is our best seen so far, so we'll store that. Then we keep going. So they're not grumpy here, so that means that we already have this value added, so nothing to do. Now here, they were grumpy, so we didn't have this value added, so we'll add 2. But now our window is also too big. And the way to figure out what point to remove from our window, so your window is always going to be length minutes. So once you get to an index minutes or bigger, you're going to be removing something, right? Because like here, our window is 3, so that's that. So here, it's 4, so we have to remove the last guy. So basically, the place you're going to be removing is your index minus minutes. And as long as this is non-negative, then you're going to have something to remove. So we're going to add this, and then we're going to remove this, but we're only going to remove it if it's a 1, because if it's a 0, you don't need to add this to the technique of not being grumpy, because you weren't grumpy to begin with. So here we don't actually need to remove anything because they weren't grumpy anyway. And so we have yeah. So we have I think I got rid of something here. 21 total, I guess. Yeah. I think. Actually, no, we should have 23, I believe, right? Let's double check. So so we have this guy is good. So 1, 2 plus these 2 is 7, 9, 10, 17, 23. Yeah, so we should have 23 here. So now our new best result is 23. So we're basically maintaining a window of length 3. Then we go to the next thing and we say, okay, so they aren't grumpy, so there's nothing to add, but we need to remove this guy now, right? Because our our window is this. So our window used to be this. We moved it, so now we're removing this guy. So we're always going to be removing our current index minus 3. And here we check once again, were they grumpy before? Yes, they were. So this is a value we need to decrease because they were grumpy before, but we used it for the technique thing. So now we're no longer using it, so we actually have to remove it. So we'll remove 5. So we have 18. So then we keep going. So here, do we add 1? Yes, we do, because they were grumpy, now they won't be. Okay. And this is our window, and the thing we're removing is this guy now, because this used to be in our window, and now it's not, and this guy's not grumpy, so this doesn't matter, so we can ignore it. We can move all this over here, I guess. Okay, now we're gonna go over here, and so we're gonna be adding this guy, but this is a 0, so we already included it. Now our window shifts, so we delete this guy. And this guy was unhappy, but they were in our window. They were in our window originally, so we actually had this value added. But now we need to remove it because now they won't be happy anymore. So we have 17 here. Then we go to the next one. So we add a 5 because this is grumpy, so now it's not. So we'll have 22. And the one we'll be removing is this guy. And we don't need to remove it because it's a 0. Then here we don't need to add because it's a 0. And then here we need to remove 1. So we'll have 21. And then here we're going to add the 9. So we'll have 30. And we don't need to remove because this is a 0. So this is our best window. And if you think about it, like what's our total with this window? So here, our total with this window, like what numbers are we including? So we include every number where they weren't grumpy, plus every number in the window will also be included. So this, and all of these. And that adds up to 20, 30. So that's basically all you need to do is you just make a sliding window, and then you add the number if the person, we can write this down. So make a window, add number if the owner was grumpy, because now they won't be. So everything in the window is not grumpy. So if it wasn't and it still isn't, we already have that number. But if it wasn't and it, or if it was and it isn't now, then we need to add. And when deleting, delete or subtract if owner was grumpy as well, right? Because if the owner was grumpy in our window, they won't be, but once they're outside of the window, they'll be grumpy again. So this is like the criteria. So hopefully that's helpful. Pretty easy one. We just maintain a window and we just check were they grumpy or not, and we calculate a total beforehand. So that's what we're going to be coding. So first, let's get a total beforehand. So we can just say like int current or something. And we're going to go through all of the numbers. And I think the grumpy and customers are the same length. So we could just say 0. So we can basically say here if, or we could say cur plus equals. I think you can do an if else. Actually, we can do it this way. You can do a ternary and not in Python. So we could say, is this person grumpy? If this person is grumpy, then we will add 0. Otherwise, we'll add the value. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to have a result. So we'll say our result, we'll initialize it to current. So this is just if we don't use that technique at all. This is like the word, you know, if you don't use the technique at all, this is what we get. Now we have to do one more loop. So let's copy that. So we can kind of do the same thing. So if they were grumpy, then we will add the value. Right? Because if they were grumpy, now they won't be in our, because they'll be in our window. And if they weren't, then we already have the value. And if cur, or if I is greater than, so the value we're going to be deleting is I minus minutes. So basically I needs to be minutes or greater for that not to be negative. So if I is greater than or equal to minutes, then we can delete the old value, and we can do the same exact thing. So we can say is I minus minutes, right? Because like, for example, if we have 3 minutes and we're adding index 3, we'll be deleting index 0. So we'll have 3 minus 3, which will be 0. So here we just do a subtract. So if they were grumpy, then we're going to be deleting that value, because that was in our window and now it's not. So now they will be grumpy again. And if they weren't grumpy, then we don't care because all those values stay the same. And after every single one of these, we just maximize the result. And that's it. So pretty easy sliding window. The reason you don't need to use a left and a right pointer is because here your window is always the same length. It's always going to be minutes length. Normally a sliding window shrinks and grows. Here it never shrinks and grows. It's always going to be the same as the minutes. So whatever index you're on, the one you're deleting is just the index minus the minutes. This one over here. So that's why you don't need 2 for this one. All right, let's see here. All right, there we go. Okay, so for time, this is going to be, so we just have a sliding window, so it's oven. And then this is like, we basically just loop through the thing twice. And space. So let's see. So we have this cur pointer, which is nothing. We have this res, which is nothing. So it's just O1. So yeah, pretty easy sliding window. Just as long as you figure out sliding window, all you have to do is this operation, you're always going to want to use like the max window possible because, like I said, even if they're not grumpy at all, you will only get rid of values that you can. You're never going to like make it worse, right? So if they were grumpy, you're going to add the value, and if they weren't grumpy, you're going to keep the value. So you can only make your result better that way. Yeah, that's going to be all for this one. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.